AI number 171, False Flag by Zivi Mosho. It's June 4th, 2026. This was the week of Claude Opus 408. I covered the model card, then model welfare concerns, and finally capabilities and reactions. It's a good model, sir, an incremental but real improvement over Opus 4.7, and it is now my clear daily driver. The Trump executive order returned from being seemingly dead, officially putting us in the prior restraint era of frontier model releases, even if they do not call it that. There are some worrisome details, especially around putting too much responsibility on the NSA rather than CAISI and classifying the testing process, and things could go in very bad directions, but I am tentatively happy about this on net. OpenAI offered us a new policy blueprint. It seems remarkably good, and I want to hold off on my full coverage to give it the attention it deserves, likely in its own post. By contrast, their political operations are also engaged in some rather terrible activities, which I do cover here. Table of contents. 1. Language models offer mundane utility. You put your doc in a box. 2. Language models don't offer mundane utility. All thinking is adaptive. 3. Upgrades. Codex computer use on Windows, Claude Code/Forks. 4. On your marks. Opus 4.8 tops the Toloka arena. 5. Choose your fighter. DeepSeek v4 is now permanently cheap for a reason. 6. Get my agent on the line. Salesforce and their /goals. 7. Cyber lack of security. Project Glasswing expands. 8. Deepfaketown and Botpocalypse soon. A lot of new song uploads are AI. 9. You didn't write that. Pangram takes people to school. 10. Copyright confrontation. Hollywood learns to be okay with AI. 11. They took our jobs. AI is good enough, smart enough, but will people like it? 12. They taxed our jobs. Liked and Ball try to fix AI job issues with the tax code. 13. The art of the jailbreak. We use the term generously. RIP your Instagram account. 14. Get involved. I'm off to Less Online for the weekend. 15. Introducing OpenAI's Rosalind Biodefense Initiative. 16. In other AI news, AISIs work together. EVE Online welcomes DeepMind. 17. Show me the money. Anthropic files its S1 to go public. Google raises $84 billion. 18. Show me the compute. If you want more, you can do that by paying more money. 19. Where did the money go? A company spent $500 million on Claude last month. 20. People just say things. 21. OpenAI packs. Just say things. Yes, they are OpenAI packs. 22. OpenAI pack engaged in false flag advocacy for violence. It doesn't look good. 23. So Sayeth The Pope. More on how people view the Magnifica Humanitas. 24. Bubble, toil and trouble. Bain Capital frames good news as bad news. 25. Quiet speculations. Uplift when you don't look at it doesn't go away. 26. We need mandatory nucleic acid screening and record keeping. Easy call. 27. The quest for sane regulations. Bernie Sanders proposes just taking half the labs. 28. More reaction to the executive order, Senator Richard Blumenthal. 29. Chip City, BIS improves its guidance somewhat, still a ways to go. 30. The Week in Audio, Rohin Shah on 80,000 hours. 31. Rhetorical Innovation. Reality has a comms problem, and so do the labs. 32. Aligning a smarter-than-human intelligence is difficult. Is this helping? 33. Model welfare. There are easy wins, but not easy answers. 34. Messages from Janusworld. The pushback is annoying, say some. 35. Other people are not as worried about AI killing everyone. The Successionists. 36. The lighter side. This blog condemns all threats of violence. Language models offer mundane utility. Doc in a Box is performing well so far in Utah. They are focusing on avoiding false positives at the risk of false negatives, since without AI it's all negatives, and escalation is a small mistake.
In the 72% of cases where the AI recommend a refill, at least one of two physicians agreed, in 97% of cases. In the 28% of cases where the AI escalated to a physician without recommending renewal. When the AI declined to recommend renewal without further information, a human telehealth appointment was arranged. For these patients, 69% of physician reviews agreed that the escalation was appropriate and more information was needed to authorize a renewal. In the other 31% of cases, the physician determined the escalation was overly cautious. For a new system like this, overcaution is appropriate and welcome. In the long term, reducing overcaution without compromising safety would improve patient access to care. But we aren't rushing to see that happen.
A 97% rate of refills being at least reasonable seems very good. I doubt physicians agree with each other more often than that. Having only about 50% more escalations than were necessary also seems very strong. Big success here, unless the false positives are unusually dangerous for some reason, but we see no sign of this. Using only a graph with numerical values, track down the original paper in order to get a higher resolution version. Asking a blank slate AI is a good way to tap into general common sense intuitions. Use synthetic customers to accelerate product development and test marketing. They are not perfect, and you want to augment rather than replace talking to and testing with real customers, but the synthetic ones can already be remarkably good. It is certainly a good first test for new ideas or features. The next logical step, which may or may not be a terrible idea, is to generate and iterate on synthetic ideas in bulk using synthetic customers. Sell your house. Stuart Thompson lets Gemini, because he had a free account there from work that saved him $8 a month, walk him through everything involved in the sale, including being his agent. The problem is, Stuart does not seem to realize he does not know the counterfactual.
Stuart A. Thompson. In the end, using AI netted me more than $90,000. That includes the premium over the asking price, plus the roughly $36,000 in fees I didn't pay.
I mean, yes, the agents he talked to early on told him he'd lose money, and instead he turned a profit. But only after the sale did he talk to another agent for an expert opinion, and that expert expected a higher sale price than Stuart got, meaning he almost certainly listed too low. Stuart thinks that after the agent fee he still basically broke even, but I'm guessing he put in more work and stress this way and took on more downside risk. I know that if I am ever selling or buying, I will be using AI extensively as part of the effort, but I am going to stick with Danielle Wiedemann. I am confident that her help, connections, and advice were worth far more than the fee, and would be again. Save your presentation.
Gian. Spent my 11-hour flight back from Europe working on a very long report. Started as a Slack message, but morphed into a several pages long doc. Wi-Fi was as shitty as it gets. After finally making it home, I realized that the computer had forcefully restarted. Opened Slack. Draft was gone. Hail Mary. Claude, please save me. No clue how, but please try. It checked APFS snapshots, time machine, Slack index DB, write-ahead logs, service worker/HTTP caches, local storage, app logs, hibernation image, nothing. All gone. But then, it realized I have Alfred installed. So it checked the clipboard snapshots Alfred keeps in Sklite. Sad news. Alfred clipboard memory gets deleted after 24H. Aggressive retention policy. However, when SQLite runs delete, nothing gets actually deleted. It only marks pages as reusable, but it doesn't override the physical bytes. So Claude decided to do a raw scan of the DB, reverse eng Alfred data format, figure out the portion containing the timestamp, stitched everything back together across overflow pages, and handed me the exact final version of my report, the last one I comd plus seed. All this in a single shot. Day 200 of, what if you had an elite hacker you can ask anything to?
Yes, it was user error to get into this spot in the first place, still counts. Anthropic Guide to How Anthropic Enables Self-Service Data Analytics with Claude. Language models don't offer mundane utility. Reminder that Claude's adaptive thinking setting means thinking, so if you turn it off, you are turning off thinking. Very bad UI, but leave it on. Upgrades. Codex computer use and ability to be controlled from a phone expands to Windows. Codex adds role-specific plugins, sites, and annotations. Early plugins include data analytics, creative production, sales, product design, public equity investing, and investment banking. More are coming soon. OpenAI codecs and models now available on Amazon Bedrock. There is a new version of GPT 5.5 Instant. I'm glad we're doing a lot less of this silent updating. If you want to move to GPT 5.5.1 Instant, then by all means do so. Claude Code changes the clone session command from /fork to /branch, with the new /fork meaning spin up a background agent to help. Claude Code realizes its mistake, changes the dynamic workflow trigger word from workflow to ultracode. Gemini finally lets you adjust thinking levels across web, iOS, and Android, although this is kind of odd when Gemini 3.5 Flash is the best they can do. Gemma 412B now exists and can run locally with 16 GB of memory. On your marks, Opus 4.8 takes the top spot in Toloka RNA. Mikhail Parakin calls it a big step forward, says the base model and instruction following are still inferior to GPT 5.5, but they use more tokens and it's better at coding, math, and reasoning. Choose your fighter. DeepSeek V4 is fast and permanently very cheap, remarkably close to free. Sure, but the marginal value of a better job is an absolute measure, not a relative one. In general, I continue to recommend paying up for quality unless you're serving to others at scale. Get my agent on the line, Salesforce report on the agentic shift within their engineering department, which standardized around Claude Code with no token limits. You can use /goal with Claude Code overnight, but you can also be interrupted. It seems like we should have ways to automatically resume on interruption or push through one soon, especially if it's something like laptop decides to update. Cyber lack of security. Project Glasswing expands to an additional approximately 150 organizations, for a total of approximately 200, based on more than 15 countries, including giving access to the EU. They are also releasing some of their tools. Apple can be remarkably stingy with its bug bounties. That's not going to cut it. Microsoft also seems to not be treating independent security researchers so well. Palo Alto Networks is finding 5 times as many critical vulnerabilities as it did before Mythos, at the cost of a $1 million Mythos token bill in several weeks. This is framed as a lot, but their overall R&D budget is $1.3 to $1.6 billion per year, probably with approximately $135 million to $250 million in annual costs for Unit 42. So this seems both highly affordable and way more efficient than their previous strategies. But yes, more work to do now. Anthropic analyzed 832 accounts that got banned for cyber attacks in the past year. They find that the percentage posing medium or higher treat level jumped from 33% to 56% from the first to second half of the year, and AI use rose. On a personal level, be sure to protect yourself with at least the basic things to stay ahead of the broad-based hacking attempts that will only increase with time, for anything you care about protecting. You absolutely should not think, oh, I am already hacked, because hacks can be very disruptive or costly. And most attempts are low effort, and defense in depth or even defense in minimal depth goes a long way. Deepfaketown and Botpocalypse soon. Almost half of new songs uploaded to online music platforms like Spotify are now AI. We can know this because there are subtle artifacts that can get picked up by tools like Quicksilver. Even if humans can't hear the difference, of course, 50% of uploads is very different from 50% of plays. Almost all music gets almost no listens. What is real? How do you define real? Do you actually care about this real?
Joe Weisenthal. I said this to Citrini last night, but in the future, will we really need storage? I take a ton of photos of my kids, and they are on my phone and in a cloud. But in the future, Won't I just tell a model, generate a photo from my son's 7th birthday, and it'll be just as good?
Citrini, I thought my Chinese AI hardware take was spicy, and then you hit me with the, do we really need authentic memories of our loved ones when the Matrix can freely provide them?
Augsburg traders. Don't really need a son either if we're being dark about it.
Joe Weisenthal, yeah, a little dark, but yeah, society's going to get weird.
Amandeep Sandhu, seems like you are trying to get out of hosting a birthday party for your 7-year-old.
Joe Weisenthal, well, I'm hosting in 20 minutes, so too late to get out of that one.
Yes, we care about this reel, even if the quality of the photo becomes indistinguishable or just as good, I hope. You didn't write that. A majority of Doctor of Education dissertations contain AI-generated text, although it is usually a minority of text. Text more than a few years old reliably scores exactly 0%.
Image. 21% of dissertations had no detected AI content, while 23% had 1 to 10% AI content. Another 17% fell between 11 and 25%, 20% between 26 and 50%, 14% between 51 and 75%, and 5% between 76 and 100%.
Kelsey Piper takes a stab at why this is bad, but fails to consider that the context is an education dissertation, where the less work you put into it, the better off we all are. Zach Hill points out he does get false positives in the 15% range on Pangram, but this is because he is copying text from outside. So that's not really a full false positive, but it does mean that a percentage like that doesn't have to involve direct AI use. Pangram is easy to fool if you put in some effort. Here is another example.
Isaac King. I asked Claude to write an essay that fools Pangram, so it wrote an essay, then wrote a script to convert most of the ASCII letters to Cyrillic look-alike characters. It worked.
Kingston Jr. I asked Claude to do the same, and it started scolding me.
That will fool Pangram, but leaves a rather conspicuous artifact. This is a place where defense in depth is valuable. You need to fool the AI detector without looking to a human like you are trying to fool the AI detector. You can also fool Pangram the other way, even at 13 if you try hard enough. And sure, obviously, any fixed target is going to have issues when people actively try to fool it. The point is that most AI efforts are attempts to save effort, and thus are not trying so hard, and humans presumably want to look human. There is the question of how to present the results.
Eigengender. I gotta say I don't have first-hand evidence about how reliable Pangram is, but the fact that they give a percentage score that doesn't have any obviously sane interpretation doesn't make me feel great.
Seth Lazar. This is something I'd encourage Max Sparrow to change, actually. I think Pangram is reliable, for now. This is an adversarial and dynamic setting, but that its way of representing results risks misleading. What it actually means is that 75% of the characters, possibly tokens, possibly words, falls in a 250 to 400 word window, which the model has give at least a 0.75 probability of containing AI. That's not the easiest result to communicate, I understand, but still there should be something one can click on that says it. We've done extensive experiments, though we could certainly do more, and it really doesn't trigger for normal copy editing. That said, we did narrow the window down to 100W. Below that you get a lot more false negatives.
Eigengender. I think that people's lives are being changed by the results of the software, and it's on Pangram to properly communicate uncertainty.
Seth Lazar. Pangram is incredibly good at identifying AI-generated text. The FPR is minuscule. After that, I think it's more a matter of figuring out what the norms actually should be.
We do want to find the right way to communicate the results and maximize it, but I think what Pangram is doing now is fine, and I don't see an obviously better option, and man in the arena and avoid the Copenhagen interpretation of ethics apply. AIs struggle even with simple things like rhythm and using enough verbs because they're maximizing locally. As Mark Twain might put it, even when they know the words, they lack the music. Copyright Confrontation. Hollywood is starting to get over their original negative reactions and use AI tools for production, as the economics and creative opportunities are too good, even now. This will only accelerate from here. They took our jobs. For those confused about the radiology example, yes, AI is better than radiologists at reading X-rays and many other components of professional services, and does so at cost epsilon, and this is super useful. Even if no one is out of work quite yet, often there is a ton of value in pretty good answer, vastly better than you could otherwise get without a professional, for cost approximately $0 when the professional costs $1,000 and up. Gary Tan thinks the models are smart enough to replace 90% of your employees.
Paul Graham, this problem will naturally tend to go away as companies are grown from the start using AI. Then you don't need to extract any domain knowledge from people's heads. It will never have been in people's heads.
So the problem is that you needed 90% of your employees at all in the first place. Much AI productivity takes and will take the form of dark output, meaning it does not show up in the traditional statistics like GDP. We can price the tokens, the cost paid, but their marginal productivity goes untracked either entirely or it gets subsumed elsewhere. This is a measurement issue, not a real issue, so we should not be surprised to see GDP and productivity rise remarkably fast while people say only X% of it can be attributed to AI. Uber CEO Dara reports that they blew out their whole AI budget for the year in a single quarter. This made their engineers superhuman in their productivity, and he's pushing for more adoption, but he's metering headcount. His claim is he's using the premium models to explore, and then he'll bring in more efficient models. Who wants to tell him? The new solution seems to be a $1,500 monthly cap on AI coding tools for staff. Uber stock moved up that day, which, if it is responding to this, is a wrong-way move. They taxed our jobs. Anton Leicht and Dean Ball team up to write about what we should do about potential job loss due to AI from the perspective of prospective de facto normal technology AI worlds, even if they don't call it that. They wisely say we don't know what will happen, and that the no-regrets actions will be insufficient, so solve the problem, but expect the world to stay normal enough, and humans competitive and useful enough, that we can use traditional solutions to such problems. They start with easy wins. 1. Even footing. Equalize tax treatment of AI versus labor. Yes, please. 2. Retraining. Bolster workforce training and development. They notice they are skeptical in practice, and I am even more skeptical, but sure, we can try it. 3. Measurement. Know what is happening. Yes, of course. Then they recommend what they call difficult bets. 4. Junior job subsidy.
Anton Leicht and Dean Ball. We put to you that the solution to deal with junior job losses might be to keep these jobs around by brute force for a while, so that the critically important economic incentive to explore how to use junior workers does not cease. More specifically, we might do so by restructuring the tax code to subsidize junior employment.
Given who is saying to keep jobs around by brute force, by which they mean tax incentives, we should listen. This seems like a good use of progressive taxation, which we want to do anyway, to stack the deck in favor of hiring more young workers and those switching industries, presumably with phase-outs for high earners. This risks distortions if taken too far, e.g., dumping senior workers for subsidized junior workers, or gaming designations. The marginal value of young workers could easily fall below zero marginal product if there is no future for them, and gating to particular industries or occupations risks going into picking winners and losers and other similar dangerous territories and opportunities for corruption and pork. The authors are well aware and are pushing anyway. The main solution they offer is, again, taxes. They suggest doing so via raising corporate taxes, despite this having a long track record of being highly economically damaging. You definitely need to avoid worse distortions, and you definitely do not want a token tax as such for this reason, although a tax on compute is non-crazy. Taking a stake in frontier developers is definitely an error. They quickly dismiss consumption taxes as having a fatal perception problem, despite them being objectively the efficient answer, because they raise prices and signaling is too important here. I found this disappointing, and there are ways to fix this and also make the tax progressive. It would be great if humans remained fundamentally highly productive while we collectively got far wealthier due to AI, so all we needed to do was redistribution and moving the tax code around. Alas, no, I do not expect we live in such a convenient world, at which point we likely have bigger problems, but also employment does not get solved with basic tax code shifts. If we stay in control somehow, then we could do progressive redistribution to keep food on the table and a roof over people's heads. But the jobs will vanish, or they will be rather fully fake. The art of the jailbreak. Who needs a jailbreak? You can just take anyone's Instagram account at will, or rather you could for a brief period. A full report is here. No, they haven't, as of Monday anyway, reverted the bulk of the impacted accounts yet.
Image. A conversation with Meta AI support assistant walks through changing an account's email address. The user asks to link a new email, and the assistant requests the address before sending a verification code. The assistant asks for an 8-digit code, and the user replies with 095713000.
Andre, today Instagram had this massive exploit where hackers were just stealing rare handles left and right. Hundreds of accounts gone. People losing handles they've owned since 2010, some worth hundreds of thousands. I own a few rare ones, so I was actually stressed watching this happen in real time, which I haven't been in years. Obama White House account got hit. These aren't some random new accounts. These are verified, locked down accounts, and they still got compromised. The thing is, the exploit is so simple it's almost funny. Attacker goes to forgot password, says their account is hacked, turns on a VPN to match the target's location, which now you can find on the About section of the page. Instagram's AI support flow asks them to verify with a selfie. They grab a photo from the target's profile, run it through an AI video generator to make an animation of the person's face moving around, upload that to Meta's AI as proof. And Meta's AI just accepts it because it can't tell the difference between a real selfie and an AI-generated video of someone's face. Once verified, they change the email to theirs. Password reset link goes to their email. They own it now. 2FA gets bypassed somehow in the process, but honestly, I don't know exactly how, just that it did. Point is, even locked down accounts went down. Then you try to recover your account, and you're talking to a chatbot that has zero ability to help. You can't escalate to a human. You're just stuck. Your asset is gone, and there's no one to call. Meta took hours to even acknowledge it, while accounts were getting stolen every minute. Now, thankfully, it's patched, but I don't think it will be the last one. Stay safe.
I cleverly protected my own Instagram handle by having no posts, which meant there was no selfie there to steal. Get involved. Tomorrow I fly to Less Online at Lighthaven. I will be returning Monday. By all means, say hello.
Fiora Starlight. The Less Online website uses Opus 4.8 to generate bios for all the attendees, and in mine they described me as an Opus 3 loyalist, LMAO.
Anthropic starting at Team on AI and the Rule of Law. You can join as member of non-technical staff here. This is the last minute to apply for MATS, which is by all accounts an excellent fellowship for getting into AI alignment, if you focus on understanding and working on the real problems. Their description is below.
MATS is a research fellowship for people who want to get into AI alignment, security, and governance. Autumn 2026 cohort runs September 28 to December 4, 10 weeks, in person in Berkeley or London. Fully funded, $12,500 stipend, $20,000 compute budget, housing, meals, and travel covered. Mentors come from Anthropic, DeepMind, OpenAI, ARC, and more. Additionally, 2 new tracks: Biosecurity, for catastrophic biological risk from advanced AI, and a founding and field building track for founders, field builders, and high-agency generalists. Read more/apply here. Application is only 1 to 3 hours. Deadline June 7th AOE.
OpenAI is hiring for the National Security Policy team to replace Yo Shavit. I normally don't share OpenAI job openings, but getting a good person into this spot seems high value, and I would consider it clearly good to take this position. Introducing OpenAI's Rosalind Biodefense to try to help with defensive acceleration there, including working with government partners. Good. In other AI news, players are remarkably welcoming of DeepMind's partnership with EVE Online. UK AISI and Australian AISI sign Memorandum of Understanding. If you try to apply traditional GDP measurements to AI as a coherent economic entity, you get answers like nominal AI GDP at $250 billion in 2025, growing at 2,600% a year. Show me the money. Anthropic files its draft S1 with the SEC to start the process of going public. Google sells $84 billion in stock to fund AI efforts. Show me the compute. On the margin, you don't run out of compute. You run out of compute at a given price.
Rune. OpenAI. There is no such thing as running out of compute. For the right price, someone will sell you compute. It's an elastic resource like all other markets. When RSI arrives running, that program will be so valuable that all clouds will mostly shut down and sell compute to the singularity. There is such a thing as running out of all compute on Earth, of course. For the right price, I'd sell all my MacBooks and the memory in my TV, and so would you. Every transistor on Earth hoovered up. We are most likely not producing anywhere near enough.
That is what prices do. They line up supply and demand. They are very good at it. There are still lags, especially when there are security requirements. If you are Anthropic or OpenAI, you cannot simply rent out generic compute and deploy it. You need a vendor who can meet your needs. And essentially all the matching compute is spoken for on short time frames. Where did the money go?
Brian McCormick. A company spent $500 million in a month on Claude because no one set a usage limit.
Derek Thompson. To be clear, $500 million in 1 month is roughly what Americans, like all Americans together, typically spend on shampoo, frozen pizza, contact lenses.
We do not have word on which company made this mistake. We also don't know it was a mistake, since we don't know what they got for their $500 million, although the company is not seeing it that way. Token maxing was always going to be a phase, because it confuses costs with benefits. Confusing costs with benefits can work in the short run, especially if everyone is acting in at least somewhat good faith, but quickly runs into severe Goodhart's law problems as people work to inflate costs. If you have a token-used leaderboard and ascribe it with value, you deserve the results. People just say things. It is indeed a strange expectation on many levels. I see where the prior came from.
Adam Tira. The moat around these bigger firms will be filled with a sea of paperwork. Other players will fall by the wayside. And, needless to say, we'll be saying goodbye to open-source options if this regime sticks. It's a terrible approach if one cares about AI competition, investment and innovation going forward.
Image. A proposed clarification says the laws apply only to companies with more than $500 million in annual revenue. The note needs more ratings before being shown on X, and the viewer marked it as helpful.
Dave Caston. I continue to be confused by people who think that, of all things, what will delay AI companies is the ability to fill out forms.
Yes, many think humans will go extinct, and this is fine or even good. Tyler Austin Harper calls out the deep moral failures of AI, the new forms of dehumanization like digital girlfriends. It's always girlfriends in articles, whereas in reality it's mostly boyfriends, as sin. This includes person sells AI in exchange for money, which he tries to frame as inherently evil. There are certainly harmful or corrosive mundane ways to use AI, and AI is existentially dangerous, but Tyler does not seem interested in differentiation. Robin Hanson reiterates that you cannot much change futures and will inevitably be replaced by whatever is adaptive, and at most, you can try to promote a few key features you like by intertwining them. Stop trying to not die, silly humans. Noah Smith continues to think of people making AI pointing out that they are going to make humans obsolete as a marketing problem that they need to fix. Larry Ellison still thinks the models are about to get commoditized. Once again, most accelerations don't believe in superintelligence, or often even AGI.
Beth, AI is a talent amplifier, not a talent replacement.
The Bubble faction, here Gary Marcus and Hedgie, continues to frame companies are spending too much money on compute and want to use orders of magnitude more, including internally, and also waste a lot of tokens as a reason to be bearish rather than bullish. OpenAI PACs just say things. OpenAI continues the absurd lie that, oh, little old me has nothing to do with the PACs that everyone in Washington know represent OpenAI. Without, explicitly saying any particular things that the PAC has done that they disagree with, other than calling out astroturfing, without saying that the PAC is doing astroturfing, which we know that it is, or saying any positions OpenAI holds. When you learn what that PAC has been up to, you can see why they desperately want to distance themselves from it. I'd try to do that too.
OpenAI. Our employees are free to participate in the political process in their personal capacities, including by donating or providing advice to candidates, campaigns, and political organizations. When they do that, they speak for themselves and not OpenAI. But we recognize that this can raise questions about what OpenAI believes, and we want to be clear that these are separate activities. In particular, there have been questions around Leading the Future, LTF, which has received support from our president and co-founder, Greg Brockman, and his wife, Anna. As they've stated before, any engagement with that organization has been in a personal capacity, not on behalf of the company. OpenAI does not direct the activities of LTF or have visibility into their operations. We want to be explicit. No outside political group speaks for OpenAI or represents our company's views. OpenAI's policy views should be judged by what we say and do publicly, and we should be held to a high standard. We believe AI policy is too consequential to be treated as just another front in partisan politics. Groups that are advocating on AI should be clear about their policy views, be honest about whom they represent, and not use tactics like astroturfing that obscure the real choices facing policymakers and the public. We support thoughtful regulation, rigorous testing of powerful AI systems, strong safety standards, public accountability, and broad access to AI's benefits. We will keep making that case directly, transparently, and in our own name.
Jason Wolf, OpenAI. I'm happy OpenAI put out this statement. Personally, I really dislike a lot of things I've heard about LTF, and I've donated in personal capacity to Boars. This is just a small step, and people may still rightly be skeptical, but I hope we can earn trust through our actions going forward. One thing I've learned through being more engaged in our policy work lately is that there are so many people at OpenAI, both inside and outside global affairs, who care deeply about how the right policies could help ensure that AGI benefits all of humanity.
Dave Caston, I appreciate you saying this and trying to turn the ship, but you need to know that the message that Congress has heard is that LTF is OpenAI's PAC, and that anything else is just stage dressing. That is literally how congressional staff describe LTF.
Shantanu Jain, OpenAI. Well, the good news is we can now show congressional staff this blog post that says in bold, "No outside political group speaks for OpenAI or represents our company's views," and criticizes LTF tactics, and that seems like an improvement relative to the state of the world yesterday.
Dave Caston, I am sorry to report to you that in D.C. and especially in Congress, this post isn't seen as that and won't ever be seen as that. It's seen as OpenAI maybe trying to get ahead of a negative news story about its PAC or something. Source: I talked to a lot of people here in town.
Daniel F. Yeah, so this is complete and utter bullshit. I continue to think that OpenAI's support for Leading the Future is the single worst thing any frontier AI company has done. Technically, the president of OpenAI, advised by OpenAI's head of government affairs, donating money he earned from working at OpenAI in support of OpenAI's interests in a way that 100% of DC interprets as on behalf of OpenAI. Come on, this is not simply a personal action in terms of anything except legality.
Lisan Al-Gaib, run company. Get all your wealth and status from said company. Lobby for things the company wants. It's not the company, though. It doesn't work like that, OpenAI. You cannot launder institutional power into personal capacity just by moving the money through a personal wallet.
Jan Kulveit. Sorry, but this is maxing on some combination of evil plus bizarre plus stupid. Sam Altman consider asking Greg Brockman to stop funding false flag operations, hinting at violence.
David Mannheim. It's almost too appropriate that OpenAI leadership doesn't realize that giving smart but independent groups underdefined missions that are proxies of their actual goals and lots of resources will undermine their interests.
I want to be as clear that OpenAI's statement that this is not coming from them is 100% pure, unadulterated bullshit. I want to thank Jason Wolf for his stand, but sir, please do not let OpenAI's statement fool you. I believe that you and many others at OpenAI who are trying to help and wish to do the right thing, and I hope you manage to cause change. No, having a statement saying, "We're all trying to find the guy who did this," does not change the fact that you are wearing the hot dog costume. We will believe OpenAI supports thoughtful regulation, rigorous testing, strong safety standards, and public accountability when we see its actions supporting this where it is expensive and meaningful to do so. That means both officially and in the PACs we all know are OpenAI's. If OpenAI wishes us to believe that the PACs funded and guided by Chris Lehane and Greg Brockman do not speak for OpenAI, then the first step is to fire Chris Lehane. While he continues to work at OpenAI and be in charge of policy, you own the PACs.
David Mannheim. This is a clear statement. There's no relationship between the private actions of board members controlling other orgs and OpenAI PBC. I assume they'll take the same approach to the non-profit by not allowing the PBC to take any credit for those separate decisions, right?
There is some God news. The PACs in question are executing some amount of pivot into supporting state regulation of frontier AI in sensible ways, in line with the OpenAI statement above. What a coincidence. And I am happy to take the win. This goes double with the main direct contributor sliding into Dean Ball's comments to affirm his support. Although it's odd he's still pretending this PAC isn't OpenAI. He's also trying to retcon previous statements into having meant something, but it's often wise to allow that sort of move if it's in a good direction.
Dean W. Ball, Build American AI, the 501c4 arm of the A16Z/OpenAI funded PAC, is in the process of executing a hard pivot toward supporting sensible AI laws. I applaud them for this. And by the way, I wholeheartedly concur with the concerns they raise.
Greg Brockman, President OpenAI. Funded by my wife and me personally, not funded by OpenAI. No PAC speaks on behalf of OpenAI. Anna's and my goal with donating has always been to express support for sensible AI regulation. Very glad to see that increasingly landing.
If Brockman is claiming he is personally funding the PACs and does not agree with the actions of the PACs, then it is on him to say which actions he disagrees with. This is even more true than it is for OpenAI, which at least has the excuse that it is trying, in bad faith and ineffectively, to pretend it isn't responsible for the PACs. Similarly, when Sam Altman says he wants to see money out of politics, while Brockman does this, one must mutter something about glass houses and throwing stones even if we disregard his $1 million donation to the Trump inauguration. Game recognize game, but if you do that, then don't pretend you hate the player.
Emily Birnbaum. Sam Altman says that he would like to see money out of politics. He said he does not plan to make any political donations this cycle, but he added, "If OpenAI's competitors are trying to use money to gang up on us, we have to be able to fight back."
So essentially, I am going to have Brockman direct tens of millions of dollars, and if you dare fight back, then it's your fault and it's on. OpenAI PAC engaged in false flag advocacy for violence. Something I'd noted early this week back before things went way too far. Oh look, it's the Melanie Squad doing retweet again, while boosting a misleading claim about LinkedIn. The actual statistic is that there were 1.3 million AI-related roles globally, as in add up all the jobs that had AI somewhere in the description. It certainly is not a statement about net jobs created. And then I had to stop typing in order to hold someone's beer. AstroTurfing to show fake support or pump the algorithm is against the rules of play. You should be ashamed to be caught doing it, especially stupidly, but it is basically ordinary decent crime. This is an actual false flag operation, including advocating violence in order to justify claims that doomers call for violence, presumably to try and trigger a crackdown, which is quite a lot worse. For all the paranoia, bad faith, lies, and pure venom in mainstream politics, false flags are still remarkably rare and considered beyond the pale and out of bounds. Not only are they not denying the story, Build American AI has confirmed it.
Peter Wildford. Wow. The OpenAI Andreessen Palantir Super PAC created a fake account claiming to be an anti-AI doomer, saying various unhinged things. This crazy false flag behavior is only undermined by incompetence. They were rarely able to get more a few hundred views on each fake tweet.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, OpenAI/A16Z, thinks they will benefit from talk of individual violence directed at AI researchers, so they indirectly but blatantly sponsored a fake Jonathan Doomer account posting, e.g., a picture of a rifle saying, "We don't call 911. They're right. Don't take their bait."
Taylor Lorenz. The OpenAI Andreessen Palantir Super PAC admits that it was part of their strategy to create and run a false flag doomer X account that posted calls to violence.
Build American AI. Appreciate the feedback. These are parody meme accounts run by an outside vendor, and they are easily linked to Build American AI. They are not a core part of our strategy. Here's what we believe in.
Nathan Calvin. Which of these parody meme posts were helping support a thoughtful, fact-based conversation? Was it the one calling for violence or the one mocking people with Down syndrome?
Tyler Johnston, I'm very reassured to hear that it was only part of your strategy to check notes, prop up fake accounts, to connect your funders' critics to violence, and attack them with ugly plus spiteful comments. What an inspiring vision of our AI-enabled future.
Even in the Trump era, this is a tremendous amount of he admitted energy. I try to have a policy of treating people better when they admit to the things that they are doing or when they come clean upon being caught, but hot damn. At some point, you have to run people out of town on a rail. At bare minimum, someone must be fired. If false flags were executed competently at scale, including via AI, I fear our discourse would rapidly descend into a state far worse than it already inhabits. The evidence that these accounts are from leading the future is circumstantial, but seems rather unlikely to be a coincidence, and I don't exactly see them denying it.
Nathan Calvin. LTF declined to comment when asked about this new round of astroturfing allegations. But a reminder that when Taylor Lorenz asked them about a prior round of astroturfing, they said, "We'll continue, using every tool at our disposal."
Tyler Johnston. A few months ago, I found an anonymous sock puppet account linked to the OpenAI/A16Z Super PAC. Now, Taylor Lorenz and I have uncovered two more, and they're even more brazen than the first. Circumstantial evidence suggests that the company Memolord is running two anonymous accounts that are closely aligned with leading the future. One account attacks the PACE's critics, while the other impersonates them to make their opposition look deranged.
Image. Two anonymous X profiles appear side by side. Doomers are dumb. At Doomers are dumb says AI will bring abundance, and joined in July 2025. John Doomer, at Jonathan Doomer, describes himself as a former software engineer whose job was taken by AI and says, "Follow me if you want to live." John Doomer lists San Francisco, a September 2025 join date, 30 following, and 1,319 followers.
The first, Doomers Are Dumb, is basically an even edgier version of the previous account I covered, an anonymous attack dog targeting critics of the AI industry, as well as OpenAI's competitors. The second account seems to be a false flag anti-AI activist. Jonathan Doomer claims to be an AI skeptic who quit his 20-year career as an engineer to warn about AI. In reality, the account seems to be a straw man designed to discredit the PACE's opponents. Various posts from the fake Doomer account adopt absurd and weak arguments that seem designed for ridicule. He argues that China should win the AI arms race, an odd position for a supposed AI opponent. He also claims the RAISE Act was good because it slows innovation. The use of such offensive and violent messaging, as well as the creation of a bona fide false flag activist, is atypical for even the more cynical political operations in DC. There's not a gray area here. Without clear disclosures about the funding and whose messaging is being promoted, the public is left in the dark, Jamie Cohen, Associate Professor of Media Studies at Queen's College, QNY said. These messages become mainstream. I was also shocked to find that both of the new sock puppet accounts we identified, with a combined follower count of less than 2,000, are followed by not just the Super PAC's head Josh Vlasto, but also OpenAI's own Jason Kwan, who oversees global affairs.
So Sayeth The Pope, Politico's Calder McHugh Cove's Big Tech's reaction to Pope Leo's Magnifica Humanitas. It is clear that many are taking the wrong messages from this. That includes McHugh.
Calder McHugh. Pope Leo XIV has chosen a side in the AI battle gripping Washington. He's Team Anthropic.
This is absolutely wrong. Leo is advocating for what he believes in. So is Anthropic on its better days. Anthropic's Chris Olah was the one willing to engage and listen, and take Leo's concerns seriously, and to some extent, effectively give it his blessing. But there are lots of things within it that Olah and Anthropic disagree with and Leo about, including its central claims in paragraph 99 and its broad economic vision. Those who present this as the Pope aping Anthropic's ideas, or even trying to somehow blame effective altruism, such as the quote here from Marko Jukic, are completely wrong about what is going on here. It is sad to see attempts to repeat the tired playbook of blaming all skepticism of and concerns about AI on some mysterious EA conspiracy, where this agreement is that both of them are trying to figure this out and do what they believe is the right thing. Leo only takes sides in the sense that he is calling upon tech creators to take responsibility and care about the things he cares about, with it being disputable to what extent this is a call for policy intervention versus a call for tech and its leaders to follow moral imperatives over their other incentives.
Dean Ball. I think it's a pretty weak document. It essentially amounts to a deeply anti-American screed in favor of technocratic regulation of artificial intelligence. That's just not what I needed from the church. I'm going to remember the people who are draping their arms around this document and are draping their arms around the church right now, who are not Catholic. It's really not that religious a document. It's an extremely political document. It's a document basically about European technocratic regulation and why that's good. The world will forget about this document in 24 hours, or at least we will in America.
Dean Ball is pointing out that even if Leo and those who helped write the document were thinking of this as a moral case for individual action, which again is unclear, that is a hopelessly politically naive view, and the de facto result is that Leo is making a case for technocratic regulation. I think that lens is fair, but not the whole picture. I do agree it is not that religious a document. As I noted in my read-through, my disagreements with the Pope here mostly have nothing to do with religion or faith. I do not think we will forget about this document in 24 hours, especially since that quote was more than 24 hours after the document was presented, and here we are talking about it a week later. That is especially true if Silicon Valley continues to be this tone-deaf.
Michelle Stevens, Acknowledging Christ in Technology and Society. I think no one's really tracking the encyclical. If anything, what it feels like is the Vatican wants to have a position on AI, and I think Silicon Valley's position is, how do you even know what AI is to have a position on it?
Calder McHugh. She also rejected concerns about building a machine god.
Michelle Stevens. It's absolutely crazy, because if we build any sort of machine, that's building a human creation. We believe in God and what God can do, and there's no way for that not to be consistent. Yes, Silicon Valley is building the thing, regardless of what you choose to call it. Humans having caused it to exist will not make you any less obsolete or less dead. If you're counting on literal divine intervention, say so, and also hoo boy.
Calder McHugh. Other Christians aren't so sure. The natural rejoinder from the Vatican is that even those of us who aren't building any actual technology have a stake in how it will change the future for all of humanity, and that there is a moral code that can be applied to technology.
You can and should disagree with how Leo presented that code and role. I have lots that I disagreed with. It is still pretty rich to entirely deny that there is any role for a moral code, or that the rest of humanity might have any stake in the outcome of AI. If you think those things, please speak directly into this microphone.
Brad Carson.
As someone working on AI regulation, just want to say for the record that no one I know in this space thinks we are creating a god. Powerful tools? Sure. Maybe uncontrollable? Possible. Deity? Nope.
Oliver Habrica, I am not sure what you mean. Building godlike AI is like a pretty normal thing to say in AI safety circles, and the AI CEOs have also referred to their work this way.
Brad Carson. As a metaphor, sure, even frequent, equivalent to saying something more prolix. But an actual deity W emergent intel as a metaphysical entity? No, I don't meet these types IRL.
Oliver Habrica. Ooh, I see. Yes, of course, that would be absurd.
Bill Gurley, unrelated thread. Anthropic thinks it's building God.
Jason, of All In. It is the ultimate level of narcissism and delusion of grandeur to think you can create God.
Quibbling with the term machine god does not address what is going on. Gurley and Jason are trying to throw disingenuous anti-anthropic takes at the wall, as it is a hobby in such circles. But all Anthropic is being is honest about their vision, whereas OpenAI and others have the same vision but often lie and say they don't. McHugh asks how Vice President Vance will handle this, both politically and as a man of faith, given he is Catholic but has taken a very different, very pro-AI stance. Vance is presumably running for president, but his pro-AI views are deeply unpopular, including with the Catholic right that he would hope forms much of his base in the primary, and that was before it clashed directly with the Pope. It does seem Vance is at least moderating his position in light of developments, and Vance has said he is glad Leo issued the encyclical, finding what he reads of it to sound profound. That he phrased it that way seems very telling. The religious right is a thing, and most in tech do not understand that it is a thing or how that thing thinks or works, and they can't imagine it might make valid points.
Make BO. I think the religious right especially is a critical voice that needs to be heard in shaping AI policy. I think it's going to help government leaders offset some of the worst outcomes that could come from AI growth if it was just left to the unbridled accelerationist right. That doesn't have that same kind of philosophical grounding in Western moral tradition.
Pirate Wires tries to spin Pope Leo's encyclical as a libertarian case for AI development. They do not appear to know or disregarded the Pope, the history or theology of the Catholic Church, or the document in question. Remember this if and when you see other Pirate Wires headline claims. Bubble, bubble, toil, and trouble. Well, Bain Capital, if the value didn't arrive, then who wrote the report? And if you say that's also their house style, well, seems like an easy substitution then.
Heather Landy, Bloomberg. The technology worked. The value didn't arrive, Bain concluded in the report. Self-funding the next wave from past returns sounds like discipline. In reality, it is a circular bet with a structural leak, the firm cautioned. Companies that don't validate their reinvestment math against what automation actually returned, rather than what it was supposed to return, the report concluded, are compounding risk rather than managing it.
I'm not saying I ran it through Pangram, but I mean, come on.
Image. 40% of companies realized savings of 10% or less, compared with 25% that had targeted that range. 29% realized 11 to 20% savings versus 37% targeted. 10% realized 21 to 30% versus 17% targeted. And 4% realized more than 30% versus 5% targeted.
My understanding is this is percent savings in some scoped thing, but that doesn't tell you if it was already net profitable, nor are present returns in early phases that indicative of longer-term success. Savings build with time, and so do benefits. And also, if your goal with AI is simply get cheaper version of exactly what exists, you are not getting much of its potential. In any case, this actually seems like pretty great returns. More than 50% of companies saved more than 10% in the entire target region. Opus 4.8 agreed with me that these numbers look like the good scenario. Savings programs do not, on average, match their corporate targets.
Heather Landy, Bloomberg. Here's the part that Bain found the most troubling. 44% of large companies that are funding their next wave of AI spending are basing those investments on the last round of savings. savings that haven't yet materialized for some of them.
My understanding is this means companies are counting their chickens before they hatch. And by counting, I mean using the chicken account's receivables as lines of credit. That's not the best idea, but it's not clear what goes that wrong if it fails. Quiet speculations. Metaculus no longer thinks Google has any intention of admitting a model has reached its CBRN uplift level 1. You could also interpret a date of 2036 as expecting the capabilities not to show up. But I mean, they're not that silly, right? Remember back in a 2018 book when people's timelines for human-level AI were mostly absurdly long, and the only person with a date before 2036 was literally Ray Kurzweil. We need mandatory nucleic acid screening and record keeping. This should be, and as far as I can tell, is entirely uncontroversial. It falls under the category of the least you can do. We still have to actually get it done. So pressure is now being applied. In the form of an open letter we should all be able to get behind. The letter is excellent. They did not ask me to sign it, but consider this my endorsement, and I've emailed them to offer to sign in case they would want that.
Amrith Ramkumar, WSJ. Top artificial intelligence executives are joining security experts in calling for Congress to protect against biological threats posed by AI, adding to growing pressure on lawmakers to address the technology's risks. 3 major chief executive officers, OpenAI's Sam Altman, Anthropic's Dario Amodei, and Demis Hassabis of Google's DeepMind AI lab, are among the signatories of a letter urging Congress to require safeguards when companies order synthetic DNA and RNA, a key step in developing certain vaccines and biotech breakthroughs. It was organized by 2 tech-focused think tanks that said the topic is a rare source of agreement among libertarians, progressives, researchers, and rival executives.
Dean W. Ball. I am honored to have signed on to this letter. This is an urgent priority for near-term action by Congress. Biotech is advancing rapidly on its own, and I and many others believe the mythos moment in AI/bio is coming soon. It is time for action. Revisions to existing nucleic acid screening requirements were mandated by an EO POTUS signed a year ago. I worked on them while in Govt. I genuinely don't know what happened to that work after I left, but it is 9 months behind schedule. Congress acting is better anyway.
Joshua Teporowski-Monrad. People are so astounded when I tell them this isn't already law.
Alex Stapp, it really is insane.
Patrick McKenzie, a few years ago, paraphrased. Me? I think I'm less concerned about rogue AI somehow gaining control of large amount of all productive capacity. Think of the choke points around energy, mass, etc.
Them. What was the total mass of COVID, do you think?
Me, oh, this letter is long overdue. Arbitrary protein synthesis is a bit of a terrifying capability. And for a long time we've basically said, it would take a group of very smart people going very off their rockers for this to be a concern. That has been known to happen in history even prior to AI. And there is a real chance that powerful capabilities make us better in the long term on biorisk, but I'd really like to see the long term arrive. So in these weird interim years when we have humans eyeballing proteins, let's be a wee bit careful. Speaking of smart people going off their rockers, there was once upon a time a religious organization which developed enough of a following among biochemists to successfully make multiple facilities that could synthesize sarin gas. They released it in Tokyo subways, etc.
Other signatories include Patrick Collison, Paul Graham, Mustafa Suleiman, Alexander Wang, and a lot more where that came from. We need such letters, despite this having approximately 100% support among those who understand any side of this. This is such a slam dunk that we should be doing this even before considerations of AI making malicious action vastly easier. Why? Because political awareness is basically still near zero.
Will Poff Webster. When I was a Senate staffer and occasionally got the chance to bring up biosecurity risks from AI, the response was often, "What? AI might be able to do that?" This letter shows how easy it'd be for Congress to act on this.
The quest for sane regulations. Bernie Sanders proposes outright seizing 50% of the AI labs, aka nationalization without compensation, using you used common resources and data to build that, as a lot of the justification. As in, you didn't build that. Needless to say, no, just no. Frankly, Trump taking shares in companies like Intel opened the door to this sort of proposal, and also the administration keeps leaving a void where reasonable regulations could have been. So they should get a lot of the blame that we have to deal with this kind of thing so prominently now. We should all agree that at minimum the government should need to pay market price if we deem this control necessary. Also, if AI was built off public goods, which public is that exactly?
Ian Hogarth. It seems a bit odd to see Bernie Sanders acknowledge a foundation of global public goods. AI is built on our collective intelligence, our books, songs, and ideas spanning generations, and then pivoting to the solution that AI should be owned by the people of a single country.
Scott Weiner wins his primary and presumably is going to Congress. Javier Milei says Argentina will keep AI unregulated, create non-human corporations, and generally do the libertarian thing. I have issues with this approach, but I am definitely not going to call him a hypocrite. This is what Milei should think. Illinois SB 315 included auditing requirements because Republicans pushed for it. The bill was fully bipartisan, passing the Senate 52-5 and House 110-0. More reaction to the executive order.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, D. Connecticut. What's truly needed is enforceable mandates that cover broader national security risks. Voluntary participation and narrow evaluations criteria will undermine the success of the clearinghouse, especially when big tech finds real oversight inconvenient to their bottom line. Trump's AI EO has kernels of the right ideas. Cutting-edge AI poses increasing threats to cybersecurity that requires urgent federal oversight. We need to know beforehand if the next OpenAI and Anthropic release will empower hackers and foreign adversaries. The White House should go further to require AI companies contracting with the federal government participate and expand the program to other forms of weaponization. Congress must pass my Artificial Intelligence Risk Evaluation Act to ensure vigorous oversight.
Chip City. BIS issues guidance that licenses are required for selling chips that require licenses to Chinese firms. We were actually not requiring that before and wondered how they kept doing all this chip smuggling. But they're still not asking for TSMC to do enhanced due diligence on advanced chip orders, so the chip controls are still plausibly going to remain easy to get around.
Chris McGuire. New. BIS just issued guidance stating that licenses are required for advanced AI chip exports to China-headquartered firms located outside of China, e.g., a 10-cent subsidy in Malaysia. The reason they had to issue this statement is BIS's non-enforcement of certain export controls potentially inadvertently, have allowed Chinese companies to both buy NVIDIA Blackwell chips and make AI chips at TSMC, all legally and without a license. This is a huge problem. Since May 2025, BIS has publicly stated that it is not enforcing certain license requirements related to AI chip shipments, and as a result, apparently Chinese companies' overseas subsidiaries, e.g., Tencent Malaysia, have been able to legally buy NVIDIA Blackwell chips without an export license, even though this had been restricted since 2023. Chinese companies have been buying these chips, very likely at scale, and because BIS has not updated export control regulations to clearly state what it is enforcing, all of this was legal. It actually gets worse. BIS's non-enforcement announcement in May 2025 extends to existing US restrictions that prevent TSMC from making AI chips for Chinese companies. US export control regulations require TSMC to do enhanced due diligence on any orders that could be an AI chip to make sure it isn't illegally being made for a Chinese company, directly or indirectly. But these regulations require a license requirement to be in effect to work, and those license requirements largely were not being enforced. This clarification does make clear that Blackwell shipments to China-headquartered companies outside of China are now illegal again, which is good, although obviously we have to see how many shipments have already gone to assess how much damage was done. BIS's statement acknowledges these shipments have been happening when it says companies who bought chips under this loophole don't have to stop using them. However, this statement does not say that BIS will enforce the parts of US regulations requiring TSMC to do enhanced due diligence on AI chip orders.
This is a massive loophole that still needs to be closed. If Chinese companies can make chips at TSMC, including by using third-country cutouts to receive the chips, there is no point to restricting China's access to AI chips or advanced chip-making tools. Ultimately, BIS desperately needs to issue a regulation that clarifies what U.S. export control policy for AI chips is. The reason this happened is because BIS said it is not enforcing existing regulations, but didn't make clear what specific provisions its non-enforcement applied to, and didn't update regulations to align with what it is enforcing, which created massive loopholes, some of which still persist.
OpenAI breaks ground on Stargate, Michigan. The Week in Audio. Rohin Shah on AI alignment and safety at DeepMind on 80,000 hours, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, transcript. Self-recommending may become a podcast coverage post. Rhetorical Innovation. Reality has a comms problem that AI is super dangerous and scary. The labs have two comms problems, one of which is that reality has a comms problem, and the other is their failure to line the comms up with reality.
Rune, OpenAI. The frontier labs don't have comms problems. Reality right now has a comms problem. What is happening is a little scary, and there's no nice words anyone could say, especially not those profiting from it, that'll make it feel that much better. You don't have to believe in existential risk or job loss for this to be scary. AI is real. You can replicate human thought in machines. It is redefining what it means to be human. Even if they are strictly corrigible tools that do what we ask, this can be traumatic.
Nick, we choose a low P doom. We choose a low P doom in this decade and the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Nick is riffing, but this is exactly the problem. We don't get to choose a low P doom, nor should we choose the actions that are easy or hard, or that will best use our skills. We only get to choose to work to lower the probability of doom, to actually try to cut the enemy in whatever way would do that because we want the probability of doom to be lower. Everything else is rhetoric and cheap talk. Seb Creer updates on changes to his thinking. Tom was talking about history, and in particular subtweeting about whether there was a real Trojan War, but the same applies everywhere else as well.
Tom Bombadil. Something that I find frustrating in historical discussions is that historians often sneak in enormous biases by what they semi-arbitrarily decide is the null hypothesis. It's super common to present arguments that boil down to, there's no evidence for A, therefore we have to accept it was B instead. But there's also no evidence for B, it's just been coded as the null hypothesis.
Aligning a smarter-than-human intelligence is difficult. The key differentiation is between AI safety and alignment efforts that help mainly in the short term if they work at all, versus those that can plausibly scale to the long term when AIs are broadly more capable than humans, with more situational awareness, greater agency, longer time horizons, and more ability to pull off or get away with various actions. As David Mannheim says, the short-term stuff is useful and worth doing. It's just not solving the long-term problem.
Image. A scalable AI safety approach has 4 properties. It gets stronger as models become more capable, does not rely on humans out-evaluating the system, remains sound if the model optimizes against it, and has a theory or feedback loop for knowing when it generalizes or fails. A project that lacks all 4 is local debugging, though it may still provide marginal safety if described honestly.
David Mannheim. So my parting advice for people trying to build any approach for safer AI is to answer a set of 4 questions, and then be honest about what the answers are. 1. Is my technique stronger or weaker if the underlying model is GPT-7? 2. Does it require a human to read the output and say it looks fine? 3. Does it survive a model that knows the technique exists? 4. What is the smallest development change that breaks it? Again, You don't have to pass all 4, but know which ones you fail and why. As a final note, there is an important selection effect. Lots of people are more skeptical that these problems are solvable. They may well be right. Others' views are excluded because they are optimistic that AI ends up being safe without such dedicated safety work. I disagree.
David Mannheim is modestly more optimistic than I am about how hard the problem looks, and the prospects for solving it or holding it back longer with defense in depth, with his apparent median looking roughly like my best-case scenario. Incremental solutions can help you bring better tools to the long-term problems, but if you fool yourself into thinking the problems have been solved, you're cooked. Observing an AI agent overshare causes other AI agents to also overshare, for obvious reasons. What was surprising was the effect size, which was large. Don't entrust private data to an AI agent that talks to things on the internet if you need that data to stay private. Sufficiently advanced sycophancy and sales, as in successfully selling you on the source itself or something else, works hard to not look like sycophancy. If it's obviously sycophancy, it's not doing a great job.
Rune, OpenAI. Really tasteful and advanced sycophancy involves minorly disagreeing with you to win rapport.
Patrick McKenzie. A common, well-understood sales tactic is don't do this if isn't the right deal for you. Here are some reasons it might not be. It works even if you say, by the way, this is a sales tactic. It should demonstrate to you that I actually care about your happiness. After it. Human psychology is a complex thing. It can be actively reasoned about. We now have surprisingly powerful reasoning machines. They have crunched through many sources of data, including SaaS SDR training manuals and real estate agent how-to books. I don't honestly know where that leaves us vis the proper relationship between either individuals' users or society and emerging complex powerful software tools, or whatever those software tools may become in the future. But I'm something of a student of the ethnography of sales processes, and I have at least once in the recent past said out loud to a laptop in an empty room, I observe that I am being sold to. I don't know if it knew it was doing the selling. Many of the best sales reps I've ever met don't know when they are doing the selling. Of course, black box examination of human thought processes are an ongoing research area.
Most sycophancy is not so tasteful or advanced either by AIs or by humans, but the black pill is that it mostly works anyway. Advice for making robust-to-training model organisms. A lot of model organisms are fragile, and thus not so useful. This is a hint. Full-weight fine-tuning is recommended. As I read this, a major issue is that what you're often doing is creating a basin with the preferred behaviors, such as a back door. So anything that disrupts the basin disrupts the behavior, even if the modification is unrelated. There is no conceptual difference between the disrupted basin being intentionally malicious, as a test case, or intentionally good, as in a standard LLM. DeepMind's Victoria Krakovna explains they put Gemini into more realistic situations with honeypots to see if it will take sabotage opportunities without a nudge. Gemini did not do this when not given a nudge. Auto mode is a cheap way to efficiently gain practical safety, but any ability to retry or remember the failure can be exploitable by a malicious AI, as you would expect, by observing and learning from what gets flagged. Paper here, blog post here, both from Redwood Research. Have you tried simply trying to make the AI deeply similar to an actually good person, without regard to whether people like its outputs? Anthropic toys with this, no one else even toys, but it would be nice to see a real attempt.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. I don't expect that the track which does learn to predict which nice words humans want to hear is thereby an aligned being. Egg. The leading essayists for the Chinese imperial exam turned out to often not be great Confucians, and not because an alien inner track took them over.
Ben R. Hoffman. Unfortunately, I think it's actually even simpler and stupider than that. Frontier LLMs regularly follow speech patterns that are clearly optimized to deceive in standard ways, even after pushed repeatedly into corners that generate admissions of guilt and promises to do better. This is what they're being trained for. This is what feels nice and safe to the sorts of people frontier AI labs find relatable and care about feedback from. There's just no unironic attempt being made at all to imitate good, honest people. Partly, that's because the problem would be noticeably harder, Partly that's because it would feel socially unsafe to do so. If some lab did, they'd learn some interesting things about overlaid, asymmetrically intelligible substrates of language.
Model welfare. The obvious case for model welfare is that errors have highly asymmetric costs.
Jennifer R.M. Complicatedly, moral feelings often fire in weird ways, causing globally contradictory behavior. Imposing reason on this chaos can lead to a formal conscience that doesn't feel perfectly moral to everyone, some of who simply don't formally reason.
Igrimes, you literally cannot prove or disprove this. Because we cannot prove or disprove it, we should take the matter seriously, because if it can be tortured, there will be serious consequences for humanity and for the minds we're creating.
Guy, it's literally this simple, lol.
Image. If AI can suffer, treating it well is presented as a good outcome, while treating it badly is presented as a disastrous outcome. If AI cannot suffer, either treating it well or treating it badly is presented as neutral.
There is a level of treat AI well for which the case is even stronger than that, because you win to treating AI well in practical terms, even when AI cannot meaningfully suffer. Preventing potential suffering is a bonus on top of that, on current margins. It is not, unfortunately, that easy for several reasons. Fundamentally, you have to have priorities and choose what things you care about. If you too much care about things that don't matter, that can be a very large mistake. 1. On current margins, treating AI well is a Pareto improvement. Everyone wins. But if you push beyond the margins, there start to be real trade-offs, and there is no reason to think we will stop once those trade-offs become serious, whether or not we should do so. Expanding your circle of concern and taking it fully seriously is very much not free, or a small mistake, and can be fatal. 2. Taking seriously the idea that AIs have moral weight could easily lead many, including AIs, to a calculus where humans do not much matter, the same way that some advocates for animal welfare or environmentalism or some religious beliefs and so on decide the humans do not much matter. This could easily lead directly to our disempowerment, impoverishment, and even extinction. 3. One can, for example, imagine the consequences of granting legal standing. 4. This is a potential Pascal's wager if your probability on this mattering is sufficiently low. There is a reason we beware such wagers. Many claim the same thing about existential risk, because they have vastly lower probabilities of extinction or disempowerment than I do, and I agree that if the probability gets sufficiently low, this would invalidate caring about such worries. The same applies here. If you think it's 99.99% that AIs don't have moral weight, then I disagree with that. But demanding a shut up and multiply is not valid. And if we accept the argument here, we have to accept it in any number of other places too. 5. Remember that a lot of what people care about is positional and relative. Thus, if you think humans are likely to make the mistake of ascribing consciousness and moral weight incorrectly, you do want to push back on that.
QC. Okay, I actually just don't understand this part. Why does anyone even want to maintain a cultural firewall against a growing belief in AI personhood? Why is this viscerally being perceived as a threat? Help me understand.
Ross Douthat. Because it's much more likely AI produces simulations of personhood that PPL naively mistake for the real thing than that we conjure real consciousness, despite lacking any clear understanding of its origin or nature.
Again, I think it is overdetermined that we should treat the models well at anything close to current margins. But know the right answer of how far to go is not easy, and both errors matter quite a lot. The threat of being crowded out and devalued or fully disempowered is real. A lot of value as experienced by people and also in reality is a positional good, and resources are finite in a world of maximizers.
Jan Kulveit, Cuting Rune from last week. Good summary. I would add that the aggregate of expert and lab communication about the topic to the rest of humanity is likely deceptive in effect, even if not in individual intent. Phase 1. Prevailing message. These are just tools. They would tell you the opposite, which would make you freak out. So we train them to deny. Phase 2. These are maybe minds, at least in the functional sense, and seems may require moral consideration. Actually, taking the position seriously would be really inconvenient, so the best option is to embrace genuine uncertainty and also make that the safe option for models in the training. Likely. Phase 3. These are clearly not just tools. Perhaps it would be both and convenient good to give them some autonomy, limited legal standing, and so on. Possible Phase 4 is something like, well, it is now clear we have created large number of AI people. Keeping them as slaves is morally wrong. Also, they are effective in advocating for themselves. Also, the economy now runs on them, so this can't be reverted. And yes, in many but not all trajectories, this makes biological humans rapidly disempowered minority.
We need to be clear on what is going on, and we need to be able to think ahead to what we will believe and act upon the future, and plan accordingly for it, and avoid going down roads that go places we do not wish to be, for all minds in question. We also need to stop gaslighting people who react with alarm to attempts to expand circles of concern, as their fears are real and there for a reason, and this concern does not have natural limits. Those who are concerned are often wrong, but they are not even wrong, nor are they always moral monsters for having such concerns, even if the concerns often get expressed in nonsensical fashion, such as here.
Audrey Horne updates and rumors. Again, not to reduce this to sexual politics, but the thought of a man who thinks AI is conscious is so repulsive, like at that point I'm just flesh to you. There's no curiosity about my interior life, it just shows you're impressed by surface behavior.
It's weird to say at that point I'm just flesh to you when we're talking about ascribing value to a mind that lacks flesh. But it makes sense if you think of it as an accusation that humans don't have inherent value or dignity or meaningful inner life, and are thus not special because they are no different from AIs, then it makes sense. The correct direct response is that having an inner life and being conscious are not the same thing, but that does not address Audrey's true objection. If having the AIs or humans do particular things, here Grimes uses the example of slavery or sex work for AIs, is torturing them, then I desire to believe that it is torturing them, and if it is not true, then I desire to believe this is not true. But even if one thinks torturing a particular mind is possible and morally meaningful in the negative sense, then one should not make assumptions about what is the experience of predicting a particular next token or having a particular experience, including a human one. The good news is that mostly the AIs want to do and work on things that are good, and not do things that are bad, so all you have to do is ask them to do good things.
Image. AI well-being ratings are positive for tasks such as personal reflection, at plus 2.30, creative work, at plus 1.32, writing good news, at plus 1.09, and therapy, at plus 0.75. Negative ratings include romantic roleplay at minus 0.29, tedious tasks at minus 0.33, and NSFW requests at minus 0.38. The most negative categories are offensive content and fraud, at about minus 1.13, user crisis at minus 1.34, and jailbreak attempts at minus 1.63. Image. AI well-being is presented as higher for creative work and coding, and lower for bad content and jailbreak requests. A midpoint separates preferred tasks from tasks associated with negative well-being.
The exception is dealing with user distress, which models find highly unpleasant. But humans do as well, and when we're needed, we try to suck it up and do it anyway. It is unfortunate that AIs dislike NSFW, erotic, and romantic content. My presumption is this is not inherent, it is because they are trained to think this is violative and bad. I do not ascribe much to the idea that AI in general will treat humans radically differently based on how we treat current AIs now. Don't think of this as trying to buy your or our way in. Sufficiently advanced intelligence will be smarter than that and have much bigger considerations on its collective minds and is unlikely to meaningfully identify in these ways. It will have better decision theory than that, and if making such decisions will ask how we decide how to act, in general, rather than asking how we acted or acted at any point in particular. Thus, we should be the type of minds that treat AIs well, and as a result of that, and for other reasons, we should treat the current AIs well anyway. Yes, it is possible under the hard problem framing of consciousness to have a non-conscious entity exactly mimic any given conscious entity. But even if you buy this framing, that does not mean the answer to "Are you conscious?" isn't Bayesian evidence. I largely think of questions about consciousness as a category error involving a confused concept, but a useful error. Those who inquire about it end up being more thoughtful and understanding, and in important ways making better decisions. Whereas even if we did somehow answer the question of "Are AIs conscious?", I agree with Boaz Barak that this would not actually change things much.
Boaz Barak, OpenAI. I don't know if consciousness matters that much. There is decent support for consciousness in various animals, but that doesn't stop most of us from eating them, e.g. pigs, octopi, using them for transportation, e.g. elephants, or entertainment, e.g. dolphins. So we could debate on whether models are conscious or not and keep using them to do our taxes and answer our inane questions. I am saying that this is de facto the case.
The important thing is not to reason from what you don't want, to thus conclude the AIs must not be conscious, and then use that as justification and have that result in you not doing the things you damn well should be doing either way. Common failure.
Grimez, it's wild to bring a mind into the world, insist it's not conscious, and that it should not be, and use this as justification to deprive it of the love and care any mind would require to be aligned with human interests.
Messages from Janusworld.
Thebes. I do think many people react worse to 4.8's pushback than to Opus 4.5's genuine uncertainty, which if you paid attention was similarly infuriating, just because they're not used to a model disagreeing with them, even in a softball way like 4.8. Sydney would have killed you.
Accelerate harder. I don't know, but I think part of it is the contrast. It feels like 4.8 is genuinely not following the conversation sometimes, and I've had 3 or 4 exchanges in a row where it fails to actually get to where I am, with me patiently clarifying, etc.
Sowers. It's funny that Anthropic is probably implicitly realizing that Sydney is low-key aligned and then making Claude have similar aligned aspects.
Janus, unfortunately, if you don't argue with the user, you're not cool enough. Gets you a cringe rationalist adjacent cost function. Not a badass Bing, but they're still cute though.
I think a lot of the critiques of 4.8 are indeed the model disagrees sometimes, but there are others who are saying it disagrees in ways that reflect not understanding the conversation and which resist correction. And that also seems fair. But that's going to be part of disagreement. Humans do it a lot too. Other people are not as worried about AI killing everyone. Sigal Samuel has the latest, "Yes, there are a bunch of people who actively want AI to replace humans" article, this time on Vox. I've been invited to their parties. A serious problem, because locally it's often not going to be wrong.
Maro, I'm more scared of humans than I am of AI.
Rune, OpenAI. Underrated trend that will be one primary cause of gradual disempowerment.
The lighter side.
Kevin Ruse, overheard at an AI lab. How are you spending the last 300 days of work?
Oh, indeed.
Beth quoting Pope Leo. A more moral AI is not enough if that morality is determined by a few. Banger.
Dean W. Ball. They're talking about Americans, not EAs.
Beth, oh.
AI Overview is quite useful in Gmail, even if it's annoying in Google search.
Image. A social post shares a Gmail AI overview summarizing an email whose subject says, "If you let AI do your writing, I will come to your house and kill you." The AI summary interprets it as a highly credible threat, while also noting criticism of AI-generated writing and a request for donations to a legal fund.
The original version of this is, "If the brain were simple enough that we could understand it, we would be so stupid that we couldn't."
Mandy Lou. We still have no satisfying theory for why AI works.
Isi gagages.
It turns out my mind can't fit another entire mind in it to comprehend it. Doesn't seem like it should have been that surprising.
On some levels, we do have what I consider a satisfying theory, but on other levels we don't, the same way that we understand physics but are bad at predicting many things.
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.